Welcome to the Pizza Buffet, powered by Pinnacle Sportsbook, here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel. All of this is part of the Hammer Betting Network. If you need more sports betting content, head over to thehammer.bet or check out all of our channels on YouTube. NHL, NBA, everything you could ask for and more, all that part of the Hammer Betting Network. Typically on the Pizza Buffet, we have a game on Sunday or whenever else I'm recording or live. We don't have a game today. We're a week away from Super Bowl, so I'm not going to be locking in bets today, but I am going to be joined by Fabian Sommer. You know him as Suma here on Forward Progress to break down the Super Bowl lines. We're going to talk about all the lines as they pertain to Pinnacle Sportsbook. Pinnacle, the world's sharpest sportsbook, and now available in Ontario. Find out what professional bettors have known for decades. Pinnacle is where the best bettors play. You must be 19 plus in Ontario. Please play responsibly. Not available to those in the U.S. If you don't know about Fabian Sommer, I think sometimes I do a bad job introing the guests. Fabian was a tout for a long time. He sold his picks in the NFL. One of the first times I came across him, he was like a weird tout in the sense that he publicly recapped his plays every single week. Here's where I won, here's where I lost. Looked at his closing line value. I started to follow him more and more. And over time, I started to realize that every single time he put out a play on football, it would move the entire market. Essentially, people rushing to bet whatever Suma had to say. One of the sharpest sports bettors out there. I would highly recommend that you follow him, and he's going to give us his thoughts on the Super Bowl here momentarily. Just a quick rundown of today that you'll see at the bottom of the screen. Suma will give us his early thoughts. We're going to talk a little bit about the Eagles defense because there's a lot of people out there that think the Eagles defense is kind of a facade or a fraud because of the schedule that they've played so far this year. The Chiefs have some wide receiver injuries that they're dealing with right now, cluster injuries there. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I spoke to Eric Eager of Sumer Sports on Wednesday here on Forward Progress. If you haven't checked out that video, check it out. But I asked him which players he thinks are most likely to outperform and underperform their expectations in the Super Bowl. He gave me his answers there. I'll ask Suma about that. And then I do want to get Suma's thoughts on, unfortunately, non-Super Bowl related, but the Dallas Cowboys hiring Brian Schottenheimer as their new offensive coordinator to replace Kellen Moore. As the comments say already, thought for sure that Cowboy sign would be in the trash after the OC news. We'll get Suma's thoughts on that very shortly. Really quickly, just checking in on the betting market so far for the Super Bowl. So odds courtesy of betstamp right here. If you are going to bet the Eagles, there is not a better spot than Pinnacle right now. Just quick refresh of the market. Pinnacle laying or showing -1, -110. Most sports books -1.5. Even on the money line, Pinnacle best price in market -119. So that's what we'd call the Pinnacle lean. Traditionally, the other side would more often be the quote-unquote right side in the game. I personally tend to disagree. I like the Eagles a little bit in this matchup, but historically speaking, whenever Pinnacle is shaded to one side, you have to understand Pinnacle right now is taking $100,000 a click on the side in the Super Bowl, and they allow you to rebet on top of that. Never going to be an issue with getting limited or anything like that, but because of that, lots of sharp action playing there, and we can see that I guess the sharp action at Pinnacle is a little bit more lean towards Kansas City. In terms of the total, it's kind of been all over the place because the initial openers that were put out there were around 51, got bet down completely, and now we see this popping back up to the range that we see now, 50.5, not quite at 51 at any of the books, which would be, sort of a key number, not sort of a key number, an actual key number in the NFL, but that's where we are right now. Really quickly, if you do enjoy the content I put out there, please subscribe to the Forward Progress YouTube channel. Helps us, goes a long way in terms of people being able to find this content through YouTube search. Also, if you do like the video, smash that like button. There aren't enough thumbs up today that are possible today to make up for how I'm feeling about Brian Schottenheimer. This is true, free 88. However, if we do get a bunch of them, I'll feel slightly better. I'll feel slightly better about the Brian Schottenheimer hire. I guess a lesson learned in terms of the complaints about Kellen Moore towards the end of the year. It can always be worse. It can always be worse. All right, I'm welcoming in Fabian Sommer at Suma, 810. I put up these captions for us. Sometimes wins betting the NFL. I thought I was being very clever. Suma usually wins betting the NFL. Suma, how's it going?
Hey Rob, greetings from a very dark, cold, and rainy Germany. Thanks for the amazing intro, probably the best I've ever got. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, can't wait
I,
to talk some football.
I think a lot of people, I think I've been followed by the same people for a long time, but I do a horrible job of like there's a lot of people out there that don't know who you are. So for those that don't, definitely follow Suma on Twitter at Suma810. You are not going to get better football insight elsewhere. Suma, let's get into the big game. We'll talk it through for the next half hour or so. But I know you were a big proponent of the Eagles for the majority of this year. Like me, in the offseason, we were talking about the Eagles being very live in the division, fringe Super Bowl contenders. I didn't really think that probably going into the year, either of us thought that this would be where they were. We thought they'd have an up year, but here they are. 1 point favorite at home to Kansas City. Obviously, all the early money on the Eagles as the week has gone on, a little bit of buyback towards the Chiefs. I'm curious to hear your breakdown of the Super Bowl matchup, what you see, if there's anything that you like on the main markets here.
Yes, first of all, I can't wait to watch this game, and I really hope that Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes will be as close as to 100% as they possibly could. With 2 weeks to get healthy, Mahomes with the ankle, Hurts with his shoulder sprain, where he took another big hit against San Francisco, where he was in awful pain. So I hope they're both going to be fine for us to get a very good game. I think that the Eagles, for me, top to bottom, are clearly the better team, and I don't think it's very close. When we go unit for unit, secondary Eagles, linebackers Eagles, defensive line Eagles, wide receivers Eagles, offensive line Eagles, tight end KC, but the Eagles also got Dallas Goedert. And then there's just a big discrepancy, despite that I'm really high on Jalen Hurts, between the two quarterbacks. So it's really, for me, top to bottom, Eagles, much better team, but the quarterback could still make a big difference in this game. And I would also make the case, we have been talking about Andy Reid and what they've done with Patrick Mahomes since 2018, but I think you will agree that when it comes to in-game decision making, the Eagles have the clear edge here when it comes to when to kick, when to go for it on fourth down and stuff like that. So I think that the Eagles also have an edge there, and then it basically depends on how much can Patrick Mahomes overcome all the talent discrepancies between both teams, in my opinion. I think that the Eagles will have a major advantage at the line of scrimmage, especially on offense. It's the best offense in the league. The best rushing offense in the league, and a big part of that is Jalen Hurts being the 11th guy that the defense basically has to defend and has to block. And they should have an advantage at the line of scrimmage, because I think outside of Chris Jones, there isn't really a guy on the Chiefs side that I think would need to be double blocked. So the Eagles can basically run, in my opinion, every one concept out there. And they're going to face a defense that, I think we will talk about strength of schedule later, but against a defense that has been average against the run this year, but has faced the easiest schedule of opposing run defenses. So I think that's really a key matchup, in my opinion, the Eagles' offensive line, especially their run game, against the Chiefs' defense. And I also think that Jalen Hurts should have his fair share of options in the passing game. We don't know about L'Jarius Sneed yet. I think if he's out, that's going to be a major blow for the Chiefs secondary. I think the first practice, I think it's on Tuesday this week, will be very key because concussions are usually 50-50 for the next week. And for 2 weeks after, it's usually in the 90% range. If Sneed is a DNP on Tuesday, I think the chances are high that he's going to miss that game. And without him, the Chiefs will be playing arguably, I think, with 3 rookie cornerbacks against A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And they also don't have a strong linebacking group to defend Dallas Goedert over the middle of the field. I like their safety tandem, but I think without Snead, there isn't really a lot that I like about the Chiefs on that side of the ball. On the other side, the Eagles, yes, they are probably not that good in terms of defending the pass when we look at DVOA and EPA per play, because we always have to adjust for schedule. But it's also a matter of fact that they have been very good, and that they have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. They have a very deep defensive line. They have 2 great man-to-man coverage cornerbacks, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in the slot. Avonte Maddox, I don't think he's going to be 100%. He might see some snaps. Their linebackers and safeties are vulnerable over the middle of the field, so I think we should see a lot of Travis Kelce and Julius Smith-Schuster if he's going to end up playing against zone coverage. But to be honest, I love Patrick Mahomes, and I think the Chiefs offense will score points in this one. But when I sum everything up, I think that the Eagles have a tiny advantage in this matchup. I think that if the Eagles can put scoring pressure on the Chiefs, and the Chiefs will be really backed up, and they have to throw to Marcus Valdes-Scantling and Juju against James Bradbury and Darius Slay when the defense know what's coming. I think this is a situation that, as a Chiefs bettor, you don't want to have any other quarterback in that scenario, but I also think that the Eagles overall might have a small advantage there.
We'll get more into the Eagles D in a second here. I just want to rewind to a couple minutes ago when you were talking about Nick Sirianni in-game decision-making. I think a lot of the content that comes out around Super Bowl is, people evaluating who has the better O-line, giving the check mark to one side or the other. And every single time I've seen coaching here, you get the check mark to the side of Andy Reid. And from a betting perspective, you got a bye week as well, which has historically been like the bet Andy Reid off of a bye, 2 weeks to prepare, new wrinkles in the offense. I'm wondering if how much stock you put into that overall, because I know we had Eric Eager on Wednesday. He's been talking all year about Sirianni's in-game decision-making, how much that's helped the Eagles in terms of win expectancy. But on the other side, you do have a veteran head coach that's been around for 20-plus years. Is there a way that he can offset maybe the lack of his ability to make those in-game decisions with the preparation before the game that gives the Chiefs a bigger advantage?
Yes, I think that's a very good case to make. I mean, Nick Sirianni is in his second year still. So in terms of experience, no question the edge belongs to Andy Reid and the Chiefs. I think it's the 5th Super Bowl for Andy Reid. Is that correct? So yes.
Yeah.
Robert's counting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So experience edge to Andy Reid for sure. In-game decision making very likely towards the Eagles.
All right. I want to bring in a tweet here that I saw this week and I found very interesting. So this came from NFL Pinnacle Beater at NFL Pinnacle Beat on Twitter. Metrics not informed by intuition are more dangerous than intuition not informed by metrics. Deep in our hearts, we all know this Eagles defense isn't as good as its metrics. At least I hope so. Now, obviously, what he's saying here at the end, I believe he's bet the Chiefs in the game because he says, at least I hope so. But deep in our hearts, we all know this Eagles defense isn't as good as its metrics. Do you agree with that, Suma?
In general, yes. Especially, I also agree with the first sentence, which makes a lot of sense for me at first glance. I would agree with that in the sense that the Eagles' defense is probably not as good as their DVOA or EPA per play, especially against the pass, is telling us, because defensive numbers are always inflated because of the schedule that a team faces. But I would still say that the Eagles' defense is one of the better units in the league. And I would also say that in general, we can play this game for every good defense in every year, because most of the time good defenses don't play the toughest schedule and don't face Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes every week. Mm-hmm. And secondly, the same applies to the Chiefs defense. Here is strength of schedule for defenses in terms of the opposing offenses that they have faced. DVOA, Philly 31st, KC 30th. EPA per dropback, Philly 28th, KC 27th. EPA per rush and rushing success rate, KC 32nd, it's not close, and Philly 28th. And I think especially when it comes to the opposing rush schedule, that's very interesting because I think strength of schedule always has three layers. A, the teams that you have played. B, how you have played against those teams. And third, the context layers. Yes, the Eagles and Chiefs have basically on defense played an equal, easy strength of schedule. But when we look at all the Chiefs games, they also got a lot of breaks. Titans, no Ryan Tannehill, it was Malik Willis. Chargers in week 2 lost Corey Linsley during the game, no Keenan Allen. Justin Herbert got that huge hit, I think, in the third quarter where he was almost sidelined. Rams first game without Cooper Kupp and also without Matthew Stafford. So it's not like the Chiefs did not get any breaks during the regular season. And now going back to the rush defense schedule, the Chiefs faced the easiest schedule of opposing rush defenses. The average opposing run game for the Chiefs in terms of defense, in terms of opposing offense, would have ranked 26th in EPA per rush and 22nd in rushing success rate on the season. They played 5 times against the bottom 4 rushing offenses in terms of EPA per rush. The best run offense they faced was San Francisco, and that was the first game with Christian McCaffrey where he joined the 49ers on Friday and he got like 25 snaps or something. So the Chiefs have played the easiest schedule of opposing rush defense and looked barely average against that. They have not faced any strong competition. And when we put everything together, they played an easy schedule, they've looked average, and they did not play any opposing run defense that is even in the same area code of the Philadelphia Eagles. So I think just based on that, and how the Eagles are also able to run against good rushing defenses like we saw last week against the 49ers. I mean, that offensive line was basically pushing the Niners front seven back on so many plays. I think that the Chiefs will have a tremendous disadvantage in the trenches on defense against the run, and I also don't believe that the Chiefs defense has enough quality to completely shut down that Jalen Hurts passing game, and especially if they won't have Legere Sneed in this game.
And potentially could be without wide receivers on the other side of the ball. So that's kind of the next talking point I wanted to get into here. So Deepak Chona, MD, SportsMed Analytics, I suggest follow. This is kind of like a thing for me now. I'm big into like following the medical doctors on Twitter. I think it's very useful if you're a bettor, but just trying to predict whether or not people are going to play. So we had McCole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kadarius Toney, all did not practice this week. Now, this tweet is a couple days old. It's from Friday, but this is Deepak's opinion on what's going to happen in this game. So McCole Hardman, he leans towards him sitting, not playing in the game. Juju Smith-Schuster, likely playing. Most knee sprains don't drop performance 2 weeks out, so we could probably expect Juju to be close to 100%. Kadarius Toney lean towards playing, but high ankles at only 2 weeks, decreased production. So this is already, in my opinion, and I talked to Eric Eager about this earlier this week, not a great receiving core all around. Now, it's not horrible. They just have like a lot of average receivers, in my opinion. But you take away potentially the explosiveness of Kadarius Toney, a reliable player in McCole Hardman, and I think that this is more relevant than people are making it seem right now, Suma.
Yes, absolutely. I think Mecole Hardman, yes, he's not that great receiver, but the way the Chiefs use him, and I think the best example was the 49ers game, where Andy Reid pulled off a lot of tricks in his bag, like using Hardman on a lot of these fly sweeps, where they basically left Nick Bosa alone unblocked, and Hardman had some free lanes rushing. That element is gone. Toney, that also fits with what Doc Chow is saying on his side. He expects Toney to play, but if he plays, he will far away from being 100%, and there's also the risk of re-aggravation 2 weeks after that ankle sprain. So they are really left with Marcus Valdes-Scantling, who's like a boom or bust receiver,
Yep.
with Juju Smith-Schuster, who might be 100%, but we don't really know. And that's basically their receiving group. Sky Moore, the rookie, has not shown too much this season so far, so it will probably be Travis Kelce, Juju over the middle against zone, and Jerick McKinnon out of the backfield. And I think if you think about the opposing side, like Eagles have two very good cornerbacks, deep defensive line. If those guys cannot get open and the Eagles find a way to bracket Travis Kelce, I think that will put some stress on the Chiefs' offense.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat as you there. I think if the Eagles can play these Chiefs receivers one-on-one and then kind of double cover Kelce over the middle of the field, I think that's where the Chiefs can potentially get into some trouble. They need a wide receiver to be able to win on the outside and win consistently, because if they can't, then it's just double teams on Kelce all game. And honestly, he'll still probably catch a bunch of balls against double teams as well, but you'll probably lose a lot of the yards after catch that he's good for at the tight end position, and maybe some more explosive plays. So I do think that's a big one. As much as I don't think the Philly linebackers are good, which I don't. I think it's the weakness of their defense. I think anyone would say that. It does create kind of a positive scenario for them if there's any sort of cluster injuries in the Kansas City wide receiving core. For those who are looking for props, I'll let you know on the Forward Progress channel here on YouTube on Wednesday at noon Eastern Time, I will be going live for 4 hours, and I will be bringing in the gauntlet of guests over the course of that show, including Suma right here, but tons of others that you've seen. Ben Carey, John Legeza, The Hitman, Ian McMillan, Sam Paniotovich, Andy Molitor, Johnny from Betstamp, the who's of betting in the space will be joining me. So set notifications, 12 o'clock Eastern Time on Wednesday, right here on Forward Progress. If you have not subscribed to the Forward Progress channel yet, you can do so. Just hit the subscribe button. Very easy to do. If you like the content we're putting out there, like as well. Suma, though, little sneak peek of the props this week. I want to ask you about players that you think could potentially outperform or underperform expectations this week. So obviously, more props are widely available now. I'll pull them up over the course of the remainder of the show here. But if you had to identify one person that you think is most likely to outperform their expectations for the Super Bowl, who would that be and why?
My betstamp website is not working right now because I cannot log in. Maybe you can pull up Miles Sanders rushing yards. I only remember the line that was Friday. I think it was in the upper 50s.
Let's get
low
that.
60s.
Miles Sanders, rushing yards. Okay, Pinnacle 58.5, minus 127. I think there's some errors with the Canby feed right now, but roughly we're seeing 58.5, 59.5, 60.5 is like the market consensus number at the moment.
Yeah, I like Miles Sanders. I think this is like a perfect game for him because of all the things that we addressed on the matchup side, on the Chiefs defense, or most likely not being equipped to stop the run game. We still have the uncertainty around Jalen Hurts' shoulder, so we might still not see the usual workload for him, especially if the Eagles and their favorite are going to have a positive game script. So I think this could be a smash spot Miles Sanders game. And on the other side, I think Marcus Valdes-Scantling will land on the negative side of his boomer bust potential this week, because I don't think that he will see a lot of air on the outside against either James Bradbury or Darius Slay. No receiving yards online.
No, not yet. Not widely available yet, but we will see those over the course of the week. Yeah. So you're just basically assuming that, like, I think with Marcus Valdes-Scantling, you talked about it when you were breaking down the receivers, but he's very boomer bust. So your assumption is that he's just not going to have that big catch in this game.
Yes, exactly. And I think he had 116 yards against the Bengals, and just for comparison, the 2 weeks before he had like twice. I think it was twice below 30 yards. So it's almost boom or bust with him, and I would lean towards the bust side in this one.
I am still. I know he hasn't been utilized heavily. Someone mentioned it in the chat already. I wish I had started so I could go back to it at some point. But I feel like Sky Moore is going to have a part in this game. I think he's just. I mean, he's mainly been used on special teams here, and the food snob frog hit the Sky Moore props overs. 2 weeks to prepare. You have Kadarius Toney not at 100% in all likelihood. You're looking for some sort of dynamic playmaker that you can get the ball into their hands and maybe they can do something, break a tackle. I would be looking at some Sky Moore anytime touchdown, potentially some receiving yards over as well. That's still the guy that stands out as someone in this game that I can just see being a way. You often have those playoff games or those Super Bowls where someone just comes out of nowhere and they're a big part of the offensive game plan. And I mean, this is more gut feeling than anything else. I cannot base it off of his usage this year or anything along those lines. But that's the way I would go. In terms of like underperforming, this is like it's challenging for me to put this into words because I don't want to say that the Philadelphia defense is going to underperform. But so many people are picking individual Philadelphia Eagles defenders to win the MVP of the game because they think that there's, if the Chiefs win, it's very likely going to be Mahomes, right? Like 90 to 95% Mahomes type of situation. If the Eagles win, it could really be any player, but maybe it's an Eagles defensive touchdown or, Hassan Reddick or big sack at a timely, and he gets it. I don't really think that those are that live. I really don't. I think the total's at 50.5. You can expect a relatively high-scoring game. I think for a defensive player to win it, it would have to be like an all-timer type of performance. So for me, the one thing that I'm seeing from people right now is a lot of flyers on defensive players to win MVP. I get it if you're getting stuff in the range of like 250 to 1, 300 to 1, but I'm not taking like a starting defender at 50 to 1. I don't think he's winning the MVP. Hassan Reddick's winning the MVP 1 out of every 51 Super Bowls. I really don't think that that's going to happen. So that's kind of my underperformer in market, Suma. I don't know what your take is on the MVP market, if there's anyone that stands out, but I think a lot of people are just throwing these fly, like the Santonio Holmes MVP, like I think that changed a lot for people where somebody like 20 to 1 came off the board and won, and now the thing to do is take a long shot. But I really think it's just going to come down to Mahomes or Hurts. I think for either team to win, that player has to have a big game, honestly. So I'm not as high on the long shots this year.
Yes, and when it comes to the Eagles defense, when we remember the Bucks Chiefs Super Bowl, that was arguably the worst Patrick Mahomes performance that we could have ever imagined in a big game, and it was still Tom Brady who got the Super Bowl MVP. So, and Patrick Mahomes doesn't have that fat tail like a Stafford, for example, where we could expect when he's having a bad performance to also throw like 3 or 4 picks or something. So yes, I fully agree there. Likely Mahomes or Hurts. I mean, if the Eagles get a great game script, and I think there is some fair tail because the Eagles might be able to run all over them, and that the Eagles win by margin, I also could see a scenario where a Miles Sanders maybe gets it, but that is probably still a reach.
I'm thinking too, like I didn't come prepared with these numbers, or I can't pull them, I can't access them quickly. But off the top of my head, it's very difficult for me to remember like multiple times where the Chiefs offense has given up a fumble 6 or a pick 6. Like it just doesn't happen. And that's not to say that it can't, obviously. There's a small percentage chance that it can. But I really think for a defensive player to win MVP, they need to score a touchdown. And the likelihood of scoring a touchdown against the Chiefs offense, I think is very low. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. And again, I could see the Eagles defense having a big game. I really can. I think that the Eagles defense is for real, quality of competition or not. But the likelihood of them scoring a defensive touchdown, and then you predicting the exact player that's going to do that, I think that's a long shot. All right, Suma, before we wrap this up, and again, more from Suma on Wednesday, live stream here on Forward Progress. I don't know how I'm going to do 4 hours straight. I honestly don't know. We recorded one last year. So last year's version would have appeared on the Circles Off YouTube channel, which you can also check out if you're interested in some educational sports betting content. Check out Circles Off. But me and Johnny recorded that in studio for probably about 8 hours. It turned into a 4.5 hour episode. That felt like I ran like 3 consecutive marathons. So the 4 hours live should be interesting. But Suma, I do want to get your thoughts before I go. Obviously, Cowboy symbol behind me. I was not too happy when I heard the news yesterday. Brian Schottenheimer, previous OC of the New York Jets, that would have been in the early 2010s. Seattle Seahawks more recently from 2018 to 2020. I got to tell you, Suma, I read the news. I had to do like a double take, and I'm just hoping, I'm like praying to God that next year is not the year where they just go, hyper on the Zeke first and second down runs. But I don't know how much more I can handle of this, man.
So over a span of 2 or maybe 1.5 weeks, we had Mike McCarthy saying that he wants to take over play calling. We have Stephen Jones publicly saying that they don't feel like Zeke Elliott has lost a step this year and they want him to be back next year. And them hiring Brian Schottenheimer to be their OC. I mean, what could potentially go wrong?
It's such a frustrating, Kellen Moore, for me, he has not been it for a while as well. He does some cool things here and then, but ultimately, no. I mean, after watching San Fran Dallas and the Cowboys attempt to run the ball on the 49ers defensive front, I had about enough of Kellen Moore. So, unfortunately, as a fan, when you're hoping that they replace a coordinator or a coach or something like that, you're hoping for a better alternative. And if you could give me the choice of Kellen Moore or Brian Schottenheimer, I'd probably take Kellen Moore 100 times out of 100. But we'll see. It's just like another retread coach. Schottenheimer is a German name, though. In coaching news as well, we had Sean Payton to the Broncos this week, which, why is obviously dollars and cents matters. But I don't know that anyone can right the ship for the Broncos if Russell Wilson is toast. Like that, it doesn't matter. Sean Payton, in my opinion, is a top 5 coach all time. Maybe even top. I think very highly of Sean Payton. I don't think that anyone's righting the ship in Denver if Russell Wilson has the same year that he had this past year.
Our boy Knish had a take on Twitter about the Broncos that completely backfired when they hired Sean Payton. But I think at the time he was completely right because, Denver wanted to hire a big name and basically up until sending a bring truck of money to Sean Payton, no one wanted to be there because you have that big anchor that is Russell Wilson with his huge contract, and there is not really a lot of positives to say about his season, and you have to question how he could improve going forward. And I would guess that Sean Payton got the confirmation from the Broncos that he could move on from Russell Wilson sooner or later if you don't like what he's getting out of him. I think that has to be some form of gentleman agreement because I don't see a coach like Sean Payton getting a 5-year contract and being forced to handle Russell Wilson for another 3 or 4 years. I don't think that's what would happen.
The weirdest thing to me is that, and again, I think the world of Sean Payton. I think he's a great coach. But Denver, having to surrender picks to get a coach when they're already, they've already unloaded picks in the Wilson, it doesn't make any logical sense to me. That organization obviously feels like they're in win now mode because they made the Wilson trade. And if anyone can win now, it's Peyton that turns it around. But even more draft capital given away. It's not like this is the Rams who won a Super Bowl and gave away all their draft capital to do that. This is now okay, they've given away a ton of draft capital and they still like have a quarterback who might be completely cooked. I mean, I did see Russell Wilson's last game this year. It kind of convinced me that maybe he has something. Maybe it's still there. But if it's not, that organization is going to go through a long period of being bad.
I think when it comes to projecting next season, we can only assume that the Broncos offense will be better because there was such a down year, so many injuries. And I also think that Sean Payton, we tend to remember the last few years with Drew Brees, which was basically the very quick 2.5 seconds quick strike offense.
Yeah.
But like in the early part of the 2010s, that was basically a medium to deep passing game when Drew Brees still had that arm. And I think that Peyton will probably get the best out of it when it comes to Russell Wilson throwing deep. But still, this move seems like there's a new owner group in town. There's a lot of money involved. And they are saying like, as soon as Sean Payton gets us to a couple of primetime games and maybe into the wildcard round, this investment will already pay off. This is something that I have in mind.
Yep, it's possible. I think there's a very wide range on what the Broncos could end up being next year. They're probably going to be one of the teams, I think, with the most uncertainty heading into the season. Fabian Sommer, thank you very much for joining me. Enjoy cold, dark Germany. Hopefully it doesn't get too depressing for you over there. I mean, I'm experiencing the same thing, but we got a sunny day today at least. So thanks, Suma.
All right, Rob. See ya.
All right, follow him on Twitter at Suma810. Again, more programming notes Wednesday. Tune in Wednesday. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to Forward Progress. If you don't like getting notifications, you can turn them off. The subscription's going to do you no harm, but subscribe to Forward Progress 12 to 4 Wednesday afternoon Eastern Time. We're live. Tons of people stopping in over the course of the show. I got some surprise guests. It's all happening on Wednesday. You can obviously watch the replay after the fact. No problem at all. But we are going live 12 to 4 on Wednesday. If you can make it, please make it, as that would be great. Pizza Buffet, Super Bowl Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. A week today, I will go live. I will lock in any plays that I think still have value. That will include prop plays on Super Bowl Sunday at Pinnacle Sportsbook. And, of course, if you are in Ontario, I would highly recommend checking out Pinnacle Sportsbook, especially if you're looking to get a lot of money down on games. You're sick of sportsbooks limiting you and whatever. Pinnacle is always going to take your bet. They'll allow you to rebet. Low vig as well. There's just so many things that are great about Pinnacle. So if you're in Ontario, check them out. Again, you must be 19 plus, not available to those in the U.S. Appreciate everyone tuning in here today. Again, on your way out, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you smash that like button. This has been the Pizza Buffet presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook on Forward Progress, part of the Hammer Betting Network. Peace out, everyone. Good luck with your bets this week.